I'm going to introduce you to today's speaker, David Kreiger. David has been the Sales Roads president and founder. He founded the company in 2007. Sales Roads has twice been listed on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing privately held companies. He's a regular contributor to Entrepreneur Magazine and has been named one of the most influential leaders in sales and lead management by the SLMA. So with that, David, do you want to go ahead and come on stage and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so great to be here. Thanks, Alex, for that introduction. And thank you guys for joining us. I know this is an important topic as people try to evaluate something that's very important to their organization as far as having an appointment setting partner, lead generation partner, and SDR outsourcing partner. So excited to go over some of the methodology we think is important for this and answer any questions you guys have.
Awesome. Well, I went over the boring part of your bio, David. We have to start with the fun question. If you weren't running Sales Roads, what would you do? You've been doing this for 15 years. That's a lot of time to think about another day job.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know if I can imagine at this point after 15 years not running Sales Roads. I think, though, that the thing that I find most important and enjoyable in my day-to-day is the coaching aspect. And so I really love coaching our team, coaching our salespeople. And I actually, a few years ago, had brought in a business coach for our organization that I really loved. And so I think if there were anything that I would do, it would probably be business coaching and helping other entrepreneurs or individuals who are trying to excel in sales or growing their organization and try to help them along their way.
All right, there you go. That's not what I expected, but business coach. I like it. Cool. Well, let's go ahead and dive into it. We're going to go ahead and start with our first question, and that is, who isn't a good fit for a partnership with your company? David, why is this a must-ask question when evaluating sales outsourcing partners?
Yeah, so we think it's really important when you're evaluating a potential partner is to get into their mindset and understand how they look at their market, how they look at the types of companies that they can help, and see even if they evaluate that, if they look at that internally and try to determine who are the best fit for them and who they're the best fit for to really generate great sales success during a partnership. And, there are a lot of companies out there who will say that they can really do anything. And I would just be a little wary of that. And you really want to challenge them and see whether they've thought about if they're, are better, customers and whether they're better equipped to help them. It's just like with a doctor. You wouldn't go to a cardiologist for a skin problem, right? The same thing is in sales. A lot of companies generate a good industry fit. They understand certain industries. They understand how to generate appointments and leads within those industries. And I think it's really important as you're evaluating different partners to get a sense as to whether they really are a fit for you and for your industry. And I think the best way of asking that is just to see if they've thought about who they can't help. And then you'll get a sense of whether they are really trying to fit a square peg in a round hole for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a little bit of an honesty question too, right? Like, will they tell you who they generally don't work with, or are they going to tell you everybody? So it's a tough question. How can you verify it independently, though? That's a challenge, right? And you have a tip for us here, which is to look for experience with your industry and your decision makers. Can you explain why you think this is a good way to vet that answer about who isn't a good fit for a partnership with your company?
Yeah. So once you've asked them that question, I think either if they say that they can't answer it and they can do well with anybody, or if they do feel like that there are certain types of industries that they are better equipped to handle, you can really look into that, right? You can take a look at their website. You can see if there are certain case studies. And I wouldn't just look at the case studies. I would look at them before your conversation or in a follow-up and ask them about some of those case studies that really fit within your organization and you can relate to and are similar to the product or service that you are representing. And have conversations around it. Have a conversation around the methodology, why they were successful, and dig into it, because anybody can write a case study. And you really want to push them on the details to really make sure that both it's relevant for you and your organization and whether they can really back that up with what they're saying. The other aspect of this, and I think in many ways more important than just understanding the industry that they represent, is the types of decision makers or buyer personas that they are really good at calling into, prospecting into, relating to, and generating appointments and leads for their clients. Because it is that type of, at the end of the day, sales is a one-to-one experience. It's relating and talking to somebody within the prospect's company, not just to their industry, to the individuals. And it's really important to have both expertise in understanding those personas, understanding their pain points, understanding their challenges, understanding the things that they get rewarded on, and then having a team that knows how to relate to that, understands those personas, knows how to speak to them, ask the right types of questions, and even be able to, for lack of a better word, kibitz, right, on the phone, and be able to talk about things that might be important to those types of personas that don't relate to their business life. And so at the end of the day, it is really that experience with talking to those personas and those decision makers at the company that are going to prove successful or not successful in an engagement with an appointment setting company.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think this is so interesting that you brought up decision makers as being equally important as the industry. And it actually reminds me of an interview I did with a woman for one of our white papers. This is right at the start of COVID. They had a SaaS product that helped healthcare providers do remote healthcare, right? And so the sales leader there, the VP of sales, she worked in SaaS, but she was talking to people that were leaders at hospitals. And so she had to have this medical background. She had to be able to talk to people from a medical background, even though her industry was SaaS. What was more important was that she was able to actually speak into those accounts and talk about the problems that they were facing. So it really is this 1-2 punch where, okay, it's one thing to know the lingo, right? It's a totally another thing to go in there and engage with the decision maker and really start pulling out those pain points and coming up with solutions and working towards a common goal and ultimately revenue, right?
Absolutely. And that at the end of the day there's a lot of aspects to it, but it is that conversation that is going to make or break the program, and being able to relate to that person, being able to allow them to trust that individual who just called them cold within, just a couple of minutes. And so that takes experience. It takes hiring the right types of people who can relate to those individuals, and the fact that they have built at least, a career, hopefully, or at least, within the organization have been trained on how to talk to those personas.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to flip this around on you now, and I'm going to ask, from the Sales Roads perspective, who isn't a good fit for a partnership with Sales Roads? And if we were to go look at the Sales Roads case studies we have, what types of industries and decision makers would people find?
Yeah, so I'm going to take a mini step back here with this, because this was really an important question for us to answer as an organization, and I think is really important for our clients. And we did this a number of years ago because, as a growing organization, like a lot of the organizations out there, we would take on most anything. And then we took a step back and we said, wait a second, we see certain engagements where we have tremendously long partnerships, years, almost a decade with some organizations, and we have some where we'll just do a month or two and it's not working. And so we decided to answer this question for ourselves. Why is that? What are the types of companies where we are successful and where are the ones that we aren't, both for our own organization, because we spend a lot of time up front building programs up for our clients. And if they're not going to last for long periods of time, it's not worth it to us. And obviously for our clients, if they're just doing something for a month or two and they're not seeing results, that's a waste of their time and money. And so that's not the way that we want to do business. So we spent a lot of time really thinking about this, and it's been really important for us. We have very stringent requirements or ways that we look at prospects. We have lots of companies that come in and want to work with us or want to explore working with us. And most of them we decide are not the right fit. We can find other companies that might be. And then there's those few that we think are really a good fit, and we have very long and profitable programs for them. So with that, what we found is a lot of the professional services types of companies, a lot of like just the marketing companies, accountants, consultants, financial services types of companies. we don't think are the best fit for us. We really think with cold prospecting, and we really own the phones, we're really good at the phone aspect of things, that you need to have a very differentiated value prop to be able to break through and be able to engage somebody in a short period of time. And we found a lot of times, though those organizations might have a really good value prop in the way that they have customer service and other types of things and do a really great job, it's just hard to communicate that in a very short period of time in a cold call. And so those are the types of organizations we generally don't represent and we don't work with unless they have some type of interesting hook that really differentiates them, like a piece of AI technology or whatnot. But those are the types of companies we really don't engage with. Also, we do look at the personas, as I mentioned. So for instance, there's certain types of personas that if there are companies that really just want to go after, for instance, CTOs, chief technology officers, or high-level IT individuals, what we found over time is that those individuals, the chance of them picking up the phone is so small compared to a lot of other personas. And because our niche, we're really good at engaging and creating magic over the phone, we feel that if those are the types of personas you want us to call into exclusively, that it's probably not the right fit for you or for us. And you might want to find an organization that leverages different types of channels or different types of marketing to engage those types of individuals.
Yeah, that's interesting. It comes back again just to this idea of personas, right? Some people have more experience talking to different personas. You have the account they're at, but then you actually have that individual as well. And you need to be able to reach into both if you're going to drive success. So that absolutely makes sense.
Absolutely.
I'm going to move us to our next question here, which is also a good one. How are you going to represent my brand? And we were just kind of talking about this a little bit, that we really work the phones, right? We're making phone calls on behalf of our clients, and that takes a lot of trust, right? Because if you're going to outsource your appointment setting to a partner, they're going to represent your brand, and your brand is the biggest asset you have. So I guess I kind of answered this for you here, but why else is this question so important to ask?
So I think that when companies engage with a partner, especially to do prospecting, appointment setting, lead generation, one of the things that's really important to think of, and a lot of our clients who do come to us do think of this. We work with a lot of Fortune 500 companies who are potentially hesitant because they don't want to do anything that can tarnish their brand. But I urge everybody to think about this, because for a lot of these programs, whoever you choose, whatever partner it is, whatever SDR is going to be speaking on your behalf, is going to be sometimes the first time that prospect hears about your brand. And we all know the old adage about first impressions, right? You don't want to have to try to fix any damage that can be done. And unfortunately, if a program isn't structured right, if you don't have the right type of individuals representing your brand, you can do damage. And it's not only just a positive thing that can happen for these programs, it can be a negative thing. And so we think that that's just something that's important for people to think about as they are vetting a provider, and think about the fact that this partner will be your organization. They are an extension of you. They are an extension of your brand. They are your brand. And so asking questions around that and understanding how and if they take that responsibility seriously is a really important thing to discuss with a potential partner.
Yeah, not much else to say there. How do we verify it, right? Because they're going to say, oh, of course, we're going to represent you professionally. And you have a tip for us here on how you can really go ahead and confirm this, which is ask how they're going to train their SDRs on your product. And I think there are two parts of this that are really important. They're their agents, right? Like, they're the ones that are training them. They're the ones that hired and recruited them, but it's your product. And so the company is going to need to create a training program that put those two things together. So when people, if you were to ask an appointment setting partner about how they train their SDRs on your product, one, why do you think this is a good follow-up, and what are some things you might look for?
So I would ask them that in a general way. I'd ask them, how are they going to have their SDRs get trained on your product and be able to represent your brand, and see how they react. There are organizations out there that will do an hour or two of training. And if you think about anybody you would hire internally, if you would turn them loose on the phones to represent your brand with a prospect, would you feel comfortable with that? And so ask first, how long is the training with the SDRs? And then take it one step back, because are they going to just train them by looking at your website? Are they going to just talk about it? Or are they going to build a training program for your brand, for the approach that they're going to take, how they're going to answer certain types of questions? And I think that that's really important to understand the methodology. It's one of the things that is value add, I think, in this, because a lot of times organizations don't have time internally to build a full training program. But that's what's required, not only to generate the appointments, the qualified appointments that you're looking for, but to make sure that the individuals who are representing you in the right way and being able to engage with a prospect the right way the first time.
Yeah, and that goes back to the idea of impressions, right? The first time, from the second they pick up the phone, they need to know what they're talking about. 100%. So I'll tee up 3 of these for you. We actually have a question from the audience here. So I'll let you answer from a sales roads perspective here, and it might flow right into Melissa's question. So Melissa asked, do you do one-time training for client products, or is training ongoing? So I guess from a sales roads perspective, how do we train our SDRs on client products? And is that a one-time event, or is that ongoing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So let me back up, and I'll walk through the whole methodology and touch on Melissa's question as part of that. So what we do at Sales Roads is, before we even do any training, we will create what we call a demand generation playbook. And so that is our strategic roadmap for how we are going to prospect on behalf of our client, how we are going to represent them, and how we are going to train the SDRs on the general aspects of that company's organization. And so for the first 2 weeks, we're developing that whole rigorous training program for our clients. And before we even start training the SDRs, we present that to our client to make sure that we are representing them in the right way. The things that we're going to say are things that they are comfortable with, and to make sure that they agree with the strategy. So once they sign off on that, then we spend a full week training the SDRs before they pick up the phone to call a prospect. And so that is rigorous, to really make sure that they understand the company, they understand the approaches, and that they can actualize them in a conversation. So we will do lots of internal role play to make sure that they're able to pivot, that they're able to sound the right way, they're able to engage, ask the right types of questions. And then before we go live, we actually invite the client on to do a role play as well, so that they can really hear the SDR, they can give us some feedback and things like that, and then we launch. So that's the initial training. But Melissa, you bring up a great point. It doesn't start there. That's just the beginning. So we do the first 2 days on the phones, we do debriefs at the end of the day. We do call listening, we do some more role play. We might pivot or change the approach slightly based upon what we're hearing and the success that we're having. And so there's a lot of iteration or mini trainings the first 2 days. And then we have what we call a talent development manager at Sales Roads. And that person is just tasked with doing call listening, understanding what's working across the SDR team, and doing training and continued role play. So we continue to get better over time, because if you just have somebody go and they're on an island by themselves, they might be able to do okay work. They might be able to even do good work, but they can do so much better if they're continuously being trained, coached, and mentored, and the methodology is iterated based upon success.
That makes a lot of sense. So there were a couple of things I heard there, and I hope that answers your questions, Melissa. Looks like she might have a follow-up here too. So first, client alignment, right? We're going to build this training program. The client needs to review it. So if you're working with an appointment setting partner and they're moving faster than that, if there's in a review stage, they're probably moving too quickly, right? Because you're going to spend an entire week, or we do at least spend an entire week then training the SDRs on this material. The second really important thing I heard you say, though, was the iterative process. So the product training doesn't end when you start calling. That's really just the start, because you're going to learn things from calling, right? When you're on the phone talking to decision makers, you get real-time feedback. You get a lot of feedback, right? Who's picking up the phone? Who's not picking up the phone? Are they happy to hear from you? Do they have a pain? Do they not? And that's really enlightening. And you need to take advantage of that part of the medium, because it's a two-way dialogue. Like you and I here are talking. I'm not talking directly with the audience, right? But the advantage of that two-way dialogue is you really get that immediate feedback. And the phone has that advantage. So it isn't just training up front. It's ongoing training as the campaign gets rolling to continually improve over time.
100%.
Awesome. Well, let's move on to our next question here. What can I expect from your appointments? Why is this a must-ask question for appointment setting partners?
So I think that for any program to be successful, there has to be forms of expectations. And it's important to understand whether the partner that you're choosing both has given some thought around what the appropriate expectations are and what are the expectations and metrics that matter. And so there's a few different things here. One is there are some companies, and I've seen it on their websites, where they'll basically say that they're going to get X number of appointments with this type of package. And I'm always a little confused by that, because at least from the experience I've seen, that there are some programs where in a month you might get 20 appointments, but there might be some programs where you get 8 appointments, and that is fantastic. And it really depends very much on the prospect and the level of prospect and the type of prospect that you are calling into. And it depends very much on the value prop and how it resonates with that prospect. And so no two programs are the same. And I think it's important to have a partner that really evaluates that and understands and has a methodology to give you some estimates as to what you can expect. Also is real with you that sometimes it's hard, especially with a value prop that might be new, or you're an innovative new company. It's hard to gauge how that is going to resonate. And that's part of the value of a program like this. So I think it's important for individuals who are evaluating an appointment setting partner to see if they have a methodology on creating expectations, and then for you to understand what those expectations are, and maybe the range of expectations from a high and a low. The other thing I think is important is that obviously with an appointment setting partner, it is an important metric to have a sense of how many appointments are being generated. But two aspects for that. No two appointments are created equal, right? So the qualifications matter, and the stringent level of qualifications matter, and that's going to change potentially how many appointments you have. Also, if somebody does guarantee you appointments, I would really understand their qualification methodology, because any partner can generate thousands of appointments that aren't qualified, right? Or are no-shows. But it's really important to understand their methodology and really their proclivity and openness to really understanding the qualifications you think are important, not they think are important. So I think those are important. And then the last thing is, it's hard to forecast this, but at the end of the day, what's really important from all this is pipeline creation and closed deals. And I think it's important for a partner to at least touch on that and have a sense from you what kind of pipeline justifies a program like this. What type of number of closed deals or revenue from your closed deals justifies a program like this, because and that they have some form of methodology where they're trying to get that information back to you, because you could generate a whole bunch of appointments with prospects that don't close, or you could generate a few appointments with prospects that close really big deals. And you want your partner to think that way, because that, at the end of the day, is what's going to make you and your organization money and be able for you to hit your yearly sales goals.
Yeah, I think you hit on something super critical here, and then we'll get into the tip about how we can verify this or dig a little bit deeper. But would you rather sit at your computer for 100 appointments when half the people don't show up and they're not qualified, or would you rather take one appointment with a real opportunity? And obviously, you don't want to spend your week taking appointments that aren't going to go anywhere. That is going to slow your sales team down, not speed you up.
100%.
So we have a way, you have a tip, David, for how we can verify this and dig a little bit deeper. And that is to ask how they reschedule missed appointments. When we were talking about this, when we were preparing for the event, you mentioned something about stewardship and partnership here. So do you want to elaborate on this? Why is asking about rescheduling appointments a good way to dig deeper on their appointment quality?
Yeah, so I think this is an interesting question because I think it will also catch them maybe off guard a little bit, but it will be revealing, I think, because there's a few things that relate to what I just talked about where you want a partner who really cares about qualified appointments and qualified appointments that stick. And if they don't, listen, not every appointment's going to stick, even if it's well qualified, but if it doesn't stick, that they're going to get it back on the board for you and make it happen. And so you want a partner who has that type of mindset where they don't just book an appointment and then their responsibility ends. Their responsibility ends when you have a qualified appointment and you're doing a great demo of that appointment. And so you want to just gauge their mindset as to where they feel that their responsibility ends. The other thing is if they have no methodology for checking on whether an appointment showed or not, that also shows their mindset, right? We have a robust model around that, which I know Alex, you'll ask me about, so I won't say it here. But I think it's really important for the organization to want to know whether an appointment has had not. And if they don't have a process around that, then you're basically creating a process or telling them, or it reveals again the level that they care about that appointment. So I think it's revealing again in their mindset, but also from a practical level, if your salesperson doesn't have an appointment that sits, you don't want them taking up all their time rescheduling it. It is important for your partner to be able to do that and take it off their plate.
Yeah, it is so revealing how they answer this question, because if they don't have a process for rescheduling, they literally are not thinking beyond the initial engagement, right? They're thinking, schedule it, we're done, we're moving on. I also think about the people that maybe get busy, right? Or maybe there was a calendaring issue and so they weren't able to attend the appointment, but they still agreed to take the initial appointment. And I'm talking about the prospect here now. Your appointment setting partner, they called this person, said, hey, will you meet with us? It didn't happen. And then from the prospect standpoint, if no one ever follows up with you again, doesn't create a great brand impression, right? It's like this person contacted me and then forgot about me. And if they were really qualified, they've now totally slipped through the cracks. So if you had a qualified appointment, you can't just let the fish off the hook. You got to go back and grab it.
Yeah, it's a good point. We want to minimize the number of times we have to reschedule something. But to your point, because somebody missed an appointment doesn't mean that they weren't qualified and they're not a good prospect. And we've had a number of huge deals close from an appointment that had to get rescheduled. So you don't want to lose those opportunities, and you want to have a methodology because there's gold in there.
Especially busy executives, right? Have to reschedule more than anybody. It's the people that are maybe lower in the org have more time to take an appointment right away. But if it's a busy executive, that might just be part of the game.
Yeah.
So I'll flip this back on you. What can people expect from Sales Roads appointments? And should one of those be missed, how do we go about rescheduling those?
Yeah, so with the expectation, what we do when we talk to a potential client is we really boil down the types of prospects they're looking to call into, both from a department standpoint, from a level standpoint, and an organizational structure standpoint. And we have metrics from all of our different programs that gives us a sense of how many dials and touches it's going to take to actually get that level of decision maker on the phone. So we've got that as part of our calculator. And then we talk to them a lot about their value prop. We try to get a sense for how differentiated it is, how it's been resonating in the marketplace so that we can get a good sense as to what our conversion rate will be on each of those conversations to appointment. And then we put that into a calculator and we can give them a range of potential expectations for the number of appointments that they would get during a 4-week period of time with us. So we will do that during the discovery phase. And then we ask questions as to, what is their lifetime value of a customer? What is their pipeline goals over the next quarter, 2 quarters this year? What are their close sales goals? And so then we can work backwards to get a sense as to, with that number of appointments, are we going to be able to achieve their expectations? So we really will work with them. There is not a silver bullet for each prospect as to what they can expect that we can put on our website, like I said, but we work through that during the discovery process to really give them some good expectations so that they can make an educated decision as to whether this is a good investment for them. And then if they do engage with us, that we have really good goals for our team and our SDRs that we know we need to hit in order to make this successful.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. You have another one. Continue.
Well, I was gonna start digging deeper, but you can tell me whether we want to dig at this point or stay right there.
Well, James from the audience had a question, and it's pretty on the point here. He said, financially, how do I know I'm getting a good deal compared to other outsourced companies? How do I compare quotes? And before I turn this over to David, James, I will tell you that at the end of the event, we're going to share with you a spreadsheet. It's a partner evaluation cheat sheet that has a lot of these buckets laid out in a way so that way you can compare different vendors line by line and in a nice, neat format. But David, if you are going out, you are shopping quotes for outsourcing companies, how are you going to evaluate that you're getting a good deal? And what are some of those levers you're looking for?
Yeah. And so I think that there's a number of different things. First, you need to have some of these expectation numbers and get a sense for whether that it fits into your own financial model. Whether what you're being quoted and based upon the low and the high expectations, what does that do for your ROI? And so what you need to do there, because one of the key numbers in there is that low and that high number, is you have to use the methodology and some of the questions and the digging deeper as I've suggested, because you could get a lot of organizations out there that are going to just tell you you're going to get X number of appointments, right? And you've got to really push them and make sure that number seems legitimate and that they're not just pulling it out of a hat. And so I would really evaluate that number. And if you feel like they're pulling out of the hat, no matter what they're going to charge you, I'd run for the hills, right? Because they, you could get the lowest priced provider and they book you no qualified appointments. And then that's the worst deal that you could ever ask for as far as a partner goes. But I think the best way to evaluate it is to look at those expectations and get a sense from a financial standpoint, whether that makes sense for your organization or not, and whether those numbers seem reasonable or not. The other thing is, as we've talked about, and I've seen some of our best clients do this, is they create their own matrix. So I've given you a few things that I think are important that I think you should be asking about as far as how you protect my brand, how you do training for SDRs, things like that. And I would think about some of the questions I'm asking and some of the things that you in your organization might be important, whether it's data privacy or being able to be bilingual, whatever it might be. And I'd make a little bit of a matrix along the lines of each of the different partners you're thinking about. And that is how I think you can really evaluate and see, both from a financial standpoint, but also from a qualitative standpoint, whether they are meeting your needs as an organization.
Yeah, there was so much gold in there. I almost don't even know where I want to start. But I think one of the first things really is evaluating their answers to your questions. Because if they can guarantee you a certain number of appointments, that might even be a little bit of a red flag, right? Before they've dug into you and your company, how can they guarantee a number of appointments, right? What you want to look for is a methodology to forecast a range, right? And the same goes for how many appointments are going to close or some of the other metrics that might be important to you. if they have really hard and fast answers, that doesn't necessarily indicate that they have a methodology for arriving at those answers. They might just be saying something, right? And so you really want to look and make sure that they have a process for making this work for your business, not just that they have some answer, they can give you a range, right? It's how did you come to this figure? How are you telling me you're going to get this many appointments? And then looking for things too that we touched on, like, okay, so have you actually talked to enough people in my industry and enough of my decision makers to make that forecast? Or again, are you just kind of throwing a number against the wall because you want the deal? So that's great. We've got another question from Elise, but I think it'll actually fit better with our next question. So I'm going to move us forward here. Can I meet with the SDRs calling on my campaign? This is another really great question. Why would you ask this one, David?
So it goes back to some of the things we've talked about, Alex, where at the end of the day, sales and prospecting is about a SDR having a great conversation with a prospect. And there are a lot of methodologies we put into place to try to maximize that. But at the end of the day, I really think you've got to talk to the SDR and feel comfortable with the SDR on your program, and to have the success that you're looking for, as well as going back to protecting your brand and making sure they're representing your brand in the right way. And so I think it's really important. I also think you flip it around that the SDRs who are real gems love to speak to clients, both because they get a sense of who they're representing, the types of people that they are booking appointments for, and they learn a lot from the conversations and meeting with clients. And so I think it's really important mindset for appointment setting companies to have, both to make the prospects and clients feel comfortable with the person who is basically representing their organization, but also to maximize the success of the SDRs.
Yeah, and this one's revealing because their gut answer is going to tell you a lot. They're like, yeah, you can, of course you can beat the people representing your company. That's a good first indication. If they're like, ooh, we don't know about that. We don't normally let you meet the people representing your brand. That definitely might raise a red flag. So,
and just to add one other thing here that I think is important. What we found generates the most success is having a dedicated SDR. So somebody who is calling for one organization and is really focused on that organization versus a round robin approach, where some organizations will have multiple people, depending on the day, calling, reading off a script, picking up on somebody else's leads. And I get it, because that's an efficient way to do staffing, but it is, I don't think, an efficient or effective way to do proactive outreach. And so that is another revealing thing with this type of question, because if they have a whole team of people calling on your behalf, it is hard to meet with them, right? But if you have one or two or three, and they are really focused on your program, then that should be able to be facilitated.
Yeah, that I didn't even think about that, but absolutely. If it's a rotating bench of SDRs calling on your campaign, you can't meet with them because they're rotating out every week, and that's illuminating in its own way. So I'll open it up to the sales roads, or a way to dig a little bit deeper here, or we touched on this a little bit, but requesting a role play, David, is taking, I think, meeting the SDRs one step further, right? You are not just going to meet them and make sure they sound good on the phone, but you're actually going to see how they sound talking about your product. And Melise had a great follow-up question here. She said, when you do a role play with SDRs, are you looking for red flags? Are you testing their product knowledge, or are you looking for something else? So you've asked to meet the SDRs. The firm said, yeah, of course. You get in there, you request a role play. What are the biggest things you're looking for here? And I'll even extend her question a little bit. What are some things that you might let slide a little bit? And what are some things that are going to be, hard and fast that you really want to make sure you get out of that role play?
Yeah, so I think, and there's a reason why I think it's important to request a role play, not just a meet and greet, right? And a meet and greet's good. I mean, I think that they should get to meet, but you really want to hear how they're representing your organization, how they sound, how they relate to the prospect. Are they engaging in their tone and their voice, and are they asking the right types of questions? Are they active listening? So when you say something, did they listen to it? Did they pick up on it? Did they ask a good follow-up question, or maybe incorporate some of what you said, maybe a pain point you brought up, into what they are saying to you? And so I think it is really important to hear them in action and hear them doing their thing to really get a sense of the SDR who is on your program. And it is also a great training opportunity, right? Because you might like them, but listen, for us, we role play with every client. We ask them to come in at the end of the training, day 5 of the training. And so that's a lot of training in some ways, but also it's the beginning of their journey with that client. And so they can give some perspective. Maybe there was a question that could have been asked, or there was maybe a term that was said. And that is a great opportunity to pick up some of that by speaking directly with the client. So it is more, Melise, sort of those types of feelings and things like that. I think that as far as product knowledge, I think that they need to be versed, obviously, in the product or service that they are representing. But as the SDR, we're also not doing the demo. You don't want to have an expectation that there's a lot of technical questions that they maybe aren't versed or well versed in answering. Because to be honest, a lot of times, and we talk to our clients about what the right handoff point is, that shouldn't be in a cold call. That should be brought up and discussed in the discovery call. And so there is a level of understanding of the company, of the product or service, but you don't necessarily want to grill them on specific product knowledge, because in many ways that isn't even their role. But Uber, and just to end, is I would say at the end of the role play, going back to one of the original questions, is, do I feel comfortable with this individual representing my company, my brand? Do I want them to be the first conversation that is had? And I think if that is a yes, then, even if there are a few little things that maybe there's still some training opportunities, that is a great way to evaluate that SDR.
Yeah. So you want to make sure that they're representing your brand professionally. You don't want to ask them the toughest technical questions that your account executives who've spent years and years with your company are going to know. You ultimately, as the vendor selling the product, are going to have a better handle on that. So you're not looking to throw bombs at the SDRs and, test their product knowledge so much, but am I comfortable with them representing my brand? Can they engage? Are they going to be able to speak to my buyers? And I think of an example here from a client we had who, and I started my career as an SDR here at Sales Road, so I've had some experience with this, who's talked about carpet side versus concrete side. And it totally threw me through a loop. And for people that don't know, if you work in a warehouse or something, the carpet side is everyone that works in an office, right? The accountants, the people, the business leaders. And if you're working on the concrete side, you are working on the machinery. And he used that language in a role play, and it was really illuminating because it showed that you really need to be able to know the lingo, right? And saying carpet side versus concrete side, that's not product knowledge. That's being able to engage the persona you're speaking with. And that should have been covered in the training. And if it wasn't covered in the training, the role play is a great place to catch that before it goes live on phones.
Absolutely.
So for sales roads here, can people meet with SDRs calling on their campaigns? And if they request a role play, what are we going to tell them?
So yes, we absolutely, and we encourage our clients to meet with SDRs calling on their campaign. We do make that introduction once they've gone through training, and once we built the playbook, because we think, as I've mentioned, it's really important to choose the right SDRs for the right programs and for the right personas, and to get them ready for a client conversation. And so, but we actually proactively, we really ask for our clients to come on at the end of the training, the last day of training, and do role play. And we found it so helpful, as I've mentioned, for our SDRs, for our clients, so that they can have that level of comfort with their SDR, and also to build team unity, right? Because we are a real one big team. when we partner with our clients. And so we've built that into our methodology, and it's been good for our clients because they can feel and understand and know that they're being represented in the right way. And it's great for our SDRs from a learning team building perspective.
Yeah, and like you said earlier too, a great SDR is going to be really excited about this opportunity. So this isn't something that is it shouldn't be burdensome at all. This is a win-win opportunity for everybody to get together, to get some more real world experience, if you will, talking to the person that's more of a product knowledge expert and really getting your feet wet there before you go ahead and hit the phones. So I am going to move us here into our last question. If you guys have any more questions, drop them in the chat. We will do a final Q&A at the end. But our last question today is, where do your SDRs get their data? David, why is this an illuminating question to ask?
So I think it will bring up a few different points. One, is this organization just asking the SDRs to research a target company list that you give them? Is it something that is built and they have a capability to build a list for the SDRs? Or are they asking the client, you, to be able to provide a list? And without a really good targeted list of the right types of accounts and the right types of prospects, it's very hard, if not impossible, to have a great program and for SDRs to be effective at what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And so I think it's illuminating to get a sense for, is this an organization that can work with you to really help define and understand your TAM, your total addressable market, your core customers, and the buyer personas within those accounts. And then with that information, can they generate good contact lists with mobile numbers, direct dial numbers that are updated so that a prospecting program can be effective? So it first illuminates the capabilities of that organization. Second, it gives you a sense of what the SDRs are doing with their day. We are strong believers that great SDRs who are really good at on the phone are either not or don't want to be or shouldn't be researchers. And it is a great way to divide the role. So we have a whole research team, we have a whole data ops team that it is their job to build those lists and those prospect lists for the SDRs. And we want to maximize the amount of time the SDRs have prospecting, cold calling, talking to prospects, instead of looking through LinkedIn, looking through Zoom Info, all the different databases to get the perfect list, because at the end of the day, that just slows them down and it's not what their highest and best use is. So I think it's illuminating in a number of ways, Alex, and that's why I would make sure to ask that question when evaluating a partner.
Yeah, and I think this is something a lot of people overlook. If you don't have experience running SDR teams, you can do all the training and everything, and a lot of people don't think about the data quality part. And the data quality actually is one of the most challenging parts of building a successful inside sales SDR team. Like you said, if they're calling numbers that don't exist anymore with the great resignation, that person has moved, that's a wasted dial, right? And you're not hitting your target. And this is definitely something that can be overlooked. So we have a good way to follow up on this. And you said that people should be aware of zero data campaigns. Can you explain what a zero data campaign is and why people should be aware of that when they're evaluating partners?
Yeah, so I think this goes back to some of the things I just talked to, but it's really helping to illuminate them. So if either the company doesn't have a list of prospects, right, that means it's up to you, or you're going to have to go find another company to generate that list of prospects. So that's something you have to think about, and whether that's something you want to have happen. I would really encourage you to make sure that it's under one roof, because all of a sudden you get them. If you provide a list of companies or contacts, or you get a third party to provide a list of companies or contacts versus your partner, you could just have the partner say, well, we had a terrible list and that's why we're not generating results, right? You want all accountability to be with them. And so that's why you don't want them to have zero data and bring zero data to the table. The other part is, like I said, you don't want the SDRs to be researching and building their own TAM. Our best callers, the last thing they want to be doing is spending their time research. I think sometimes not great callers like to research because it's almost a way of call avoidance, right? And so it is good to divide that role out and allow your SDRs to do what they do best, have the data and have their calling list ready for them. They can request some research. We have methodologies where it can request research. They can request different people within an organization, but they're not the ones spending hours going through Zoom and finding those. And so if those SDRs start with zero data at the beginning of the program, they're just not going to be as effective. It's going to take a lot longer for them to build that TAM, build that calling list, and it's going to take longer for you to get results.
Yeah, and another thing too I would bring up is if you're evaluating appointment setting partners and they don't have that data operation in-house, that is an additional cost that you're going to take on, because you're either going to need to go buy a list, you're going to need to source a list, or if the SDRs that you're hiring through an outsourced partner are spending the first month of the campaign compiling data, you are also paying for that. So whether you have to go source it or you're paying their SDRs to do it, you're paying for that list. And so that could be a hidden cost if that company doesn't have a data operation built in. So I'll turn it over to Sales Roads. We touched on some of this, but where do Sales Roads SDRs get their data? And we're aware of zero data campaigns, but what do we do to go the extra mile to make sure our SDRs do have all that information they need to hit the phones?
Yeah, so we have a robust sales operations team with multiple data sets, both external. We have all the biggest data sets that we can purchase, as well as doing this for 15 years. We have a great internal data set. And so as part of the buildup of the program I had mentioned, we create a demand generation playbook that's the strategic roadmap to helping our clients dominate their industry. And that is outline very clearly as to what is the TAM, what is the core customer, who are the buyer personas that we want to reach out to. And our sales ops team, before we do dial one, is researching and developing the best TAM and contact list possible that is uploaded into the CRM for our SDRs, so that when they start on day one, it's not a zero data campaign, it's thousands of data campaign, and they're off to the races right out of the gate, prospecting, booking appointments, and generating opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually just rolled out something new too, which is a research on demand process, right, David? And we rolled this out because we realized, or we just wanted to get data to our SDRs even faster. Do you want to touch on what that is and what some of the initial feedback has been?
Yeah, so what we have is sometimes when we're on the phone with somebody and we get a hint that there's another prospect we should be reaching out to, or we know that there is another avenue that we uncover in a different department within that organization that is making this type of decision, and we get that intelligence through our calls, we have a Slack channel that we've set up where that SDR can ask for that prospect, and within an hour, they will get that information. It will be uploaded into the CRM and they can start dialing it. But during that time, they can be calling other prospects, right? So they're not having to do all that research. They don't have to look at all the different databases, LinkedIn, and they're still prospecting during that time. It comes back to them, and then they come back and they can call in versus doing all that research themselves.
It goes to show the power of having an in-house data team, right? If you're bringing the list or you got to go source another one, if the record's dead, there's no process for rectifying that and finding the right information. So it really just highlights and underscores how important that one cohesive business approach, or that approach to data and calling at the same time, is really important. Well, thanks for walking us through this, David. We got our final Q&A here. I'll go ahead and fire off our partner evaluation cheat sheet so that way everyone can grab it if they haven't had an opportunity yet. So go ahead and grab that. That's a great one. We have one last final question from Elise, which is, what makes Sales Roads stand out from other appointment setters?
So hopefully you can kind of get a sense through some of these questions that I think it's important to kind of vet this out. And it is a qualitative type of metric, but I think it's really important because this is a partnership. When you do this, this is a relationship where you're really getting to know one another. You want a partner who really is working with you, iterating, understanding your goals, understanding the organization you have, and really working as a team. And for that to operate efficiently and effectively, two things have to be true. One is you can't have an organization or a partner who just builds cookie cutter programs. This doesn't work from a cookie cutter standpoint. There are a lot of ins and outs to building a program like this, to training the right types of SDRs, to selecting the right type of SDRs, to mentoring, to motivating, to iterating, to building a strategy, to iterating the strategy based upon the right metrics. And so we build fit to purpose programs, and we spend a lot of time with our clients iterating and understanding the nuances of what they need versus just trying to fit them into a cookie cutter program. And then also, it's important for an organization to care, just to care about the success, not to take everybody on as a client, but to really want to generate great results for their client, to want to see them succeed, to want to see them, if they're a startup who's just raised funding, to help them grow to the next series or to be acquired. Or we had one client that went public, to really get excited about that and really care about their success. And that's something I think you can kind of vet out through some of these questions to see whether they really do think about these types of things and whether they're on the same page and they care about your business in the same way that you do.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Being aligned, right? And we've had multiple clients be acquired or go public after working with us. And that just shows if you are aligned and you're focused on the same goals, you really can achieve amazing things.
It's true.
Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. That was our last question. I'll share one final thing with you, which is a link to David's LinkedIn. If you want to connect with David and get some more appointment setting tips, learn more about evaluating appointment setting partners, or if you have a question specifically about evaluating a partner, connect with David. I'm sure he would be more than happy to answer it for you. With that, I will go ahead and wrap it, though, and end the session. Everyone, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you on the next Sales Roads webinar. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Alex.